Hey everybody, my name is Anthony Donofrio here at Gearhouse Equipment, and today we're going to show you how to sharpen some knives and talk about the importance of why you should keep your knives sharp. So the first thing you have to do is, I guess we should start with the two different types of stones. There are wet stones and there are oil stones. Wet stones need to be soaked in water typically for about 20 minutes prior to using them. Whereas an oil stone, you basically just, as soon as you get the oil on there, you're good to go. And then you can just apply the oil as needed during the process. Same as with the water. I like to keep a cup of water when I'm using a wet stone just so I can continue to keep the stones as wet as possible during the process. We already pre-soaked these, so just want to get a little more on there. So there's a lot. Sharpening a knife can be fairly complicated in some ways because the different types of steel you have might make, you might use a different technique over another type of steel. The type of knife you have might have, you might have to sharpen it at a different angle than other knives. So I have a couple different options for that here today to show. So like this chef's knife here, just your standard chef's knife is going to typically be about 21 degrees for your angle, as opposed to something that's like a Japanese style knife or a santoku or a single bevel knife will typically be 17 degrees. This brand specifically suggests 16 degrees, however, so it's something that maybe you want to check with the knife manufacturer before you dive right into it to see exactly if they recommend something different than the standard recommendations. So moving on to stones themselves. So we have two different stones here. This one is very coarse, so you can feel how rough it is. This is definitely going to be something that you're going to use on a knife that needs a lot of love. If it's got, you know, a chip in it or something like that, you're going to need something like this to really start to grind that thing down and get it back to where it's got a nice looking edge. And then you'll progress your way up to something that's a finer grit, that's nice and smooth, that will help you finish it. And depending on the state of your knife, you might skip this one altogether. So for example, my knives that I have here, I'm just gonna go straight to the finer grit because I don't need this heavy grit here to really grind it down, essentially. So I'm gonna move that one out of the way. And I like to, at first, always use my sharpening steel as the first and last thing that I use it for. Even when you're sharpening, you can still have some pieces that might get stuck onto the blade, and this will help essentially clean it off when you're all done. And some, like this steel itself, there's one half of it is totally smooth steel, whereas the other half is kind of grooved, so it's got a little grit to it itself as well. So like even if you were just during service, you might just use this, you'd be able to use the gritty side and then move on to the smooth side just for like a really quick on the fly sharpening, if you will. So again, like I was saying, with this type of knife, you're going at 16 degrees. Now this steel actually has a cheater on it that lets you set it up to 16 degrees to start. So really using the steel or the stone itself, I would say it's a matter of trial and error and just figuring out exactly where that 16 or 17 or 21 degrees is. It's just kind of, you'll get the feel for it eventually, and you'll change your technique when you go from knife to knife once you do it enough times. So like right now to start, I'll probably go with the grooved side since we're not finishing it off right now. So I'll start with that side. Again, you want this knife 16 degrees. It's just a matter of practice. I know a lot of people go one way or the other way. I just practiced and I wanted to do it both ways because I thought it was cool. So just take it through there a few times. Now since we've been letting it sit here, I'm just going to get a little more water on there. And so once you get to the stone, there are a couple techniques to do this. One is, the most basic technique is to just go one way like this or the other way, and you would just essentially do that. I would say you probably maybe 8 or 10 times depending on how bad it is, and you do the same on both sides. Just draw it smooth smoothly across each way. The other way, which I prefer, which I think helps, especially if your knife is in rough shape, is you can actually hold it at the proper angle and then rotate it like this. Do it in small little circles. I think you need to realistically less passes this way because you kind of double up on how often it's hitting the stone there. That's my preferred way to do it. You know, maybe just do a few times on each side. Again, it really depends on how bad your knife is. If you keep up with it, you don't have to do it that often. If you keep up with it, you could probably just skip right over to the 6000 grit, the finest grit you have, and you'd be good with that, rather than having to go through the whole process every time. But again, this way is just fast and easy. These knives are already fairly sharp, so we don't have to go crazy grinding them down or trying to kill that blade. Once I'm done, just give it a wipe. Now we'll take it through the smooth side of the steel just to finish it off. A few passes on there, and that's really all it takes. Now if your knife is, like I was saying before, if your knife is dull, it's going to take you more than that. You might have to go through all 4 stages of the stone to get it to where this knife is. Let's see how sharp this thing turned out. Feels pretty good. Cuts through there really well. Oh, might as well just keep going with it in case you need some footage. Let's see. Yeah, it's nice and sharp. Actually, that's something that some knives have trouble with if they're not really sharp, is cutting through the last little bit of that skin on the pepper. So this blows right through it, no problem. There we go, that's a sharp knife. So also here at Gerhard's we offer electronic sharpening options. So this one is pretty fancy actually. It's got 3 different levels of sharpening, just like if you were to be using a stone or the steel itself. So it goes from a coarse to fine, and it's labeled right there, 1, 2, 3. And with using this, it's easy. It's even faster than the sharpening stone. I mean, you literally just drag your knife through each one. It's as simple as that. Obviously, again, if it's really bad, you might have to hit it a few times on each, or if you keep it up really well, you might just be able to skip to number 3 or just use 2 and 3. So it's just a case-by-case basis really is how bad your knives are. But always I would finish it with the steel. I think that's the way to go because it'll just really clean it off. And another thing to mention is wash your knife after you sharpen as well, because there are steel particles on there that come off, or even stones, the particles from the stone. So it's important to clean it before you use it again. That's something that I think sometimes gets lost in this. Something else that I think is really important is you're maintaining your knives and you're just constantly using your stone. There's actually ways to maintain your stone to keep it working as well as possible. And so they make these special stones here that essentially what you do is you flatten your stone when you're done. So after you've been doing this for a while, you will get flat spots, or not necessarily flat spots, you'll get little smooth divots in the stone wherever you tend to use it, like typically right in the middle will be a spot where it will not be totally flat anymore. So what you want to do is you take a pencil and you draw a grid all the way through on both sides when you do this, and then you literally just take the stone and you just grind it on there until all the pencil marks are gone, so that you know that it's flat again. So it kind of works in 2 ways in my mind. Flattens it out, and it also essentially cleans it in case it did get dirty somehow. I mean, again, you're getting metal shavings in there, so it's a good way to do that. I have also heard of people using concrete to flatten their stones as well, but that's not as sanitary as a dedicated flattener like that. Well, that's it for this video here on how to sharpen knives and maintain everything. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and watch all our videos, and thanks for watching.